Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish.
So let's talk about being under the influence, shall we? Really, under the influence. And you know, it's funny because when we got, we did a few little outings last night. We went into Asheville. We went to the Grove Park Inn. I know a lot of you've been there before. We went, where else did we went to an Indian restaurant, Chai Pani. It was so wonderful. We had all this Indian street food. It was delicious. But you know, what I noticed was there were a ton of cops everywhere. I mean, all over the place, because during the holidays, people have a tendency to over imbibe. And there are the cops trying to catch these people. And what do they write? What do they write? You know, what's the ticket say, or what happens when you're getting arrested? DUI, driving under the influence. Driving under the influence. And I want to say that, you know, this is not a show about DUIs, of course. Today we're going to be talking about how influence is everywhere and how it has its way with us, whether we know it or not. And unknowingly, influence is infiltrating. And so I want to talk about that so that we can be in the place of curating our own experience and curating whether or not we want this influence in our life or not. So influence really is the power of something or someone to affect or be controlled by that influence, or be controlled. It's either going to affect or control. When we get to the place of controlling, well, anybody ever been with a controlling, abusive, fill in the blank guy, right? You know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of control there, a lot of control mechanisms and manipulations going on. But even so, even in a relationship that maybe isn't all the way like that, we can still be affected by their influence, even if it hasn't quite gone to that realm. But you know what's so interesting though? We think about influencers today. You say the word influencer and somebody inevitably thinks of some woman in a mink bikini on a rock, on a cliff or something, or hears the stories of these influencers falling to their death. Well, influencers have been around. It's not just Instagram, but influencers have been around since the ancient Rome times. This is hysterical. Did you know that gladiators at one time were influencers, and they endorsed products because they were gladiators, and everybody looked up to the gladiator? They're just like, boom, you know, they're just the biggest ever. But that was used by clever early marketers. Let's get a gladiator to endorse it. What do you think? So, and then in the 1700s, Wedgwood china was introduced, and George III was given this gorgeous tea set from Wedgwood china, and he loved it. And so guess what they started with their whole advertising campaign? They started calling it Royal Approval in 1760s or something. Again, an influencer, right? So if this Wedgwood china has this royal stamp of approval, you know, that's what you are going to want too. So Coco Chanel was most known, of course, for her innovation of the woman's suit, and putting tweed on a woman was the very first time this was ever done. And she was also known for her little black dress. She was known for her signature Chanel No. 5 perfume. She was the first one to use 80 different ingredients. They used to be just like, you know, essences of, you know, roses or whatever, just a single thing. She did multifaceted, dimensional thing. She influenced fashion, scent, and even how women saw themselves in a more empowered way by wearing a suit, just like a man. Not men's suits, but suits for women, right? That was the whole thing. She also had a pretty sordid past, too, that was kind of exposed later as being a homophobe and anti Semitic. So there's that. But, we don't know much about that. We just know about her place in history with all this other stuff. So we'll just, leave the other garbage alone. But we are all shaped by influence, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's ugly, whether it could even wreck our lives. We're all influenced. And here's a list. I looked up influencers and got all of this. So get this. Here's a list of the ways we're influenced. Society, family, close friends, loved ones, race, culture, location, opportunities, media, interests, appearance, self-expression, and life experiences. Pretty much everything influences us. I mean, even the air we breathe. If we're breathing in dirty air, what do? We want to change that and go get clean air. Everything influences us. We need to start thinking in terms of what is influencing me right at this moment. That's how I started to look at this whole thing. So those are the things that influence us daily. But I believe, for myself anyway, at the beginning of any journey to a better life, a more vibrant life, it's that we get to choose our own influence. And we're not, just put stranded with this influence where there's nothing that we can do about it. I promise you that is not the case. And the other thing is that we have to look at and think, if we're arrogant enough to think that we're immune from influence, we're going to get influenced. Things influence us. People influence us. Words influence us. Some TV show influences us. A movie, which is all made up, by the way, even a fictional movie, that can influence us. A scary movie can influence us, even if it's all made up, keep us up all night. Just think about how influence comes in and changes your entire chemistry, your entire thought process. Everything changes it. Why is that? Because influence is the most impactful thing that has ever entered your life, and it comes in so many different ways. It's an influence. So think about worry, right? Worry, if you're up at night worried about financial stuff or your job, your kids, your spouse, or whomever, whatever, it's going to influence everything. It's going to influence your sleep. It's going to influence the way you feel. It's going to influence the decisions that you make. Influence all the way. But and then the topper is that we have a tendency to blame our influences, everything on something. Well, this is why we're stuck, because my husband, blah, blah, blah. This is why I can't, because I have Hashimoto's. This is why, we come up with all of the things that influence us and use them oftentimes to bail out of having to make a better decision or do something different. We use them. But the main influence, though, out of all of this stuff, when you look at it, is our social circles. Our social circles are the main thing. And we take on our friends' ideas, their belief systems, their thoughts as our own. Oftentimes we do. We even parrot them unknowingly, saying exactly what it is that they say. And I think back in my life, I think back to the influences that I had when, my kids were just starting to go to school, and my influences in those women, those social circle. And then I think back to the influences of my homeschool circle when I pulled my kids out of school, and how different that was. But they're all influencing, all at any little given time. They're influencing the way I think, my belief system, everything. I never gave it a whole lot of credence until I really started to unpack how influence is so influential. Duh, right? So what if I told you that the people you love most were the greatest influence on everything in your life? And what if I told you that the chances are pretty strong that maybe they're the biggest saboteurs of your dreams as well? What if I told you that? And I will tell you, I've coached thousands of women over my lifetime of coaching and being a nutritionist and all of that. And I can't tell you how many women have told me about husbands who are just like massive saboteurs, massive. They just get in the place. We're going to talk about this and how we can fix this, because the clean and the very black and white thinking is, well, cut these people off. Well, you can't. You can't cut all these people off. There are things you can do and there are things that you can't do. But the point is to be cognizant of the fact that influence has its way with you. And if you are not aware of the influence coming from the people, coming from the things, coming from the thoughts, coming from your body's chemistry even, then you're going to be a victim to all of it. But we don't have to be. And we can curate our own influence. We can curate the whole lot of it, Seriously, hand to God. So think about this. So let's get some examples. Like, here's trying to eat healthy. I'm trying to eat healthy. I'm trying to sprint. Say you're at your office, you've planned it, you got everything out. You go into the break room and what's happening? Your friends have this big spread out for someone's birthday, and it's your favorite thing, your very favorite thing. Which influence are you under? That you have to make a decision right then and then. Are you under the influence of the hot milk sprint, or are you under the influence of what's in the break room? And this is why your circle of friends is so important. And this is why we have such a great, vibrant group, because, that group can be called on right then and there to say, hey, check this out. Check out what's going on. I remember, do y'all remember the one, this is a while ago, there was a woman she's not much in our sprint anymore, but she was for a while. And she took a picture of a brownie pan, and she talked about how she was thinking about it and made a decision not to, and all of that. But she had the picture of the brownie pan, and she talked about how she was being influenced instead by the sprint. Something like that. Do you remember that? I always remember, I will never forget that one, because I thought this was such a wise way to think about it, because we choose our influence, sometimes unknowingly, but I'm saying, because I'm talking about it, I know that each one of you right now are thinking about that, making an assessment even, and deciding on which influence you're going to allow in. How about this one? This is one of my favorites. I had this happen with a coaching client she was trying to fast, and she's trying to go 18, maybe 19 hours, just trying to stretch it out a little bit. Her best friend said, oh, don't do that. You're starving yourself. You're going to lose muscle and gain fat. You don't want to do that. I like to say there's a lot of armchair nutritionists out there who haven't studied this stuff like I have. And I give them a choice of what to do. First of all, the first rule in Fast Club is don't tell anyone you're fasting. The second rule in Fast Club is that you say, I'm working with a nutritionist who specializes in fasting. So if you have any questions, I'll give you her email address. That's what you see. This is how we have to somehow figure out how to buffet this stuff. Someone's always going to come in and want to rain on your parade. You understand what that is, right? Have you ever had that happen? Check this out. When I was trying to start a business, I had my pastor tell me, go get a job at H&R Block, because what you're doing here, that's just too scary. It's too iffy. It's too whatever. This is 20 years ago when I first started my business. Come on. I'm so glad I did not allow him to influence me. Instead, I allowed my passion for my work and what I was doing, and my belief that I was called to such a time as that, to influence me more than this guy. But at a weaker moment, when I was fearful and scary, he could have come in and pulled the whole rug out from underneath. Here's one that I read this weekend that will absolutely, you ready to scorch send some fireballs. I'll tell you what, this is the truth. This woman, it's on a group that I'm on. I won't even tell you what it is, but it's a group that I'm in, and she's trying to feel good about herself. She had quite a bit of weight to lose, and she had just lost about 30 pounds or something, and she still had about 100 pounds to go. And she had gone out to lunch with a friend. This was I can't believe anybody would say something like this to someone. And her friend says when they're out to lunch that she'd rather be dead than, this is a quote, slowly die a long, fat death because of obesity. She said that. She said that to her friend, knowing her friend had been working on her weight, working on her health, working on her life and feeling better, and went out with her friend. And this is what she gets from this friend. I mean, what are you going to do with that one? Cut it off, right? That would be the last lunch ever with that woman. I'm sorry. But can you imagine somebody saying something like that to you? Come the heck on. Yeah, right? Kimberline says she needs new friends. This is why we choose our friends carefully. We choose these friends. We want influence. We don't want some backhanded, horrible, insult like that. Why not say something like, good for you. So proud of you. Yeah, not a friend at all. Ugly, ugly, everybody. Yeah. No, we don't do things like that. And that's why I say to you, and I say over and over and over and over again, your accountability and your friendship circle and everything is everything. The people in our sprint group who are most active are getting the most results. And the people who've taken it a step further and have got an accountability partner are getting the best results. I stood, I got an accountability partner for my Peloton bike, because I want that. And I told her, listen, I'm checked out till Tuesday. I've got this hiatus right now going on. I've got family here, all kinds of stuff till Tuesday. But come Tuesday morning, Mama's back on. So, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. So, yeah, friends can be jealous. You're right, Diane. But why is it that there's some people that just have the need to see the worst in you? That's one thing. Or see you and take your stuff out of context, or just ignore the fact that you are doing all these things, and instead of really holding you up and saying, I'm so incredibly proud of you. How about that? Appreciation. That's the kind of curation that we need. So Jim Rohn said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think that is an important thing. I want you to think about that. The 5 people you most spend the most time with. And, that's why it's crucial to check in with yourself. Like, who are these people and how are they influencing me? In a good way or not so much? So that's why I say we have to curate it. So let's start with number 1. Your spouse. Honestly, can they just say the worst stuff, And sometimes they don't mean to, or sometimes they are deliberate saboteurs. And all I can say to you is that you have to use your voice at this point. It is not in the heat of the moment, but in the setup for what it is that you're doing. Let's say that you're planning on sprinting. You don't keep it all to yourself. You actually say it. So, honey, here's what's happening. Tonight at 7 p.m., I'm going to go and watch the sprint webinar and take notes. Then I'm going to start planning for it this week and probably grocery shop Thursday, Friday, maybe over the weekend. Maybe going to make some bone broth. Maybe I'm going to do it the fast and dirty way. I don't know. But I'm going to get this all done, this plan. So here's what I need from you. And remember, when we're talking about it, you're not lecturing them so that they're doing it with you. You can offer it. Hey, you want to do it with me? Like, it's no big deal. But you're not lecturing them, right? No one likes a lecture. You're just merely telling them and announcing and letting them know, this is what's going down on Monday. And this is what I'm all about. And I'm going to need your support. This is what I'm going to need. I'm going to need you to, when I'm going to move your stuff. I'm going to move my stuff here. This is going to be my pantry. This is how it's going to be going down. And can you do me a favor? I do this with Mark. Can you until next Monday, not cook a big bacon and egg breakfast? I can't, to me, it just triggers me, So I say what I need, and not in a horrible way. And if we can say things like, can you do this? Will you do this for me? It's sweet. And it's like, what can I do? Of course, what can I do for you? But what if you go, every time you do X, Y, every time you cook that bacon and eggs, it triggers me. Versus, can you do me a big favor and maybe not cook those bacon and eggs, just go a whole week with smoothies with me? Would you do that for me? Guess what I got? 100% support, because I was very careful and curated my words because I had a certain result in mind that I wanted. And so do you. Nobody likes to be put in a corner. Nobody likes to be lectured or finger pointed at. Everybody wants consideration. And there can be no consideration unless you inform them of what's going down. Tell them what you plan on doing. Give them what the plan is. Let them know they're welcome to join you. Maybe it'd be a good thing, fun thing for us to do together. If you don't get, full buy-in, cool, no worries. But this is what I'm doing, and here's how I need you to support me, please. See, it would help me if. Perfect, Noreen. I love that. Yeah, we just need that, because especially I have noticed anyway that everybody wants to help somebody else out. I think it's just our human nature. It'd be so amazing if you could fill in the blank. It just makes such a difference. So with men, I think with our spouses especially, it really is about an education and just letting them know exactly what it is that we need. Number 2 is your friends. You got to look at them. Are they part of the rising tide? Are they lifting all the boats? Are they rooting me on? You got to think about that. And sometimes you get diametrically opposed to somebody, and it's just, for whatever reason, things kind of go a little south, or they're just, hell bent on taking you down. Do you need that influence in your life? Do you? Or do you want to just kind of push back a little bit and maybe not see them as much? You got to make a decision about this. And if you don't have friends that are holding you up, or friends that, you just have an influence, they're kind of, it's the Dunkin' Donuts influence, they go to Dunkin' Donuts on Tuesdays, and you tend to say, yeah, I'm just going to have that black coffee when I get there. But you walk in, and what do you smell? Maybe that's not the right influence. So maybe you just need to kind of, rearrange things a little bit and get really close with some people in the Hot Melt Sprint. Ask for help. Ask for encouragement. Ask for support. Curate it. We have the ability to do that. We have the ability to curate that influence and that whole gig. Number 3 is your environment. If like I said, I told you, today's the day, it's all going. You have to curate the environment. You can't have all this stuff everywhere. At least I can't. I mean, maybe you can. I can't live with it everywhere. I know what it is. I know what it's going to do. And I know how it's all going to show up later. It's really important for you to do it. You have to curate the heck out of it to get what you want. Good for you. Baking is a danger zone. Terry, baking is a danger zone for me too. I couldn't believe it. My daughter was she made that chocolate ganache. Oh my gosh, and with the raspberry and the chocolate ganache and the chocolate cake that she made, all of it. She made it right there in my house. And I couldn't believe the smell. I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to have that. And I did. I had a little bit of it, It was wedding cake. It was my wedding cake. But let me tell you, having that around was problematic. It was problematic. It's not for me. And so I know this about my environment. Therefore, I can curate it. That was obviously a very special occasion. But if my daughter came over and said, hey, I just want to whip up a chocolate cake, I'd say, there will be no baking in this house. We need to get rid of that. Lastly is your thoughts. And we're going to talk about this in a whole lot of detail, because your thoughts very much influence what you do. They influence your body's chemistry, and they influence how you feel about yourself. And you know that it's like where our attention goes, energy flows. That includes your thoughts. And there's so much attached to them. I want to make sure that we can do it justice by unpacking it well, because I want to support you in any way that I can. And I know this for a fact, that our influences in our lives, which we all have, are going to either support where we want to go with our lives, or they're going to bring us down. So we need to get to that place. We need to get to that supportive place of having what it is that we want for the vibrancy that our life is calling us to have. And I believe wholeheartedly that we all want that vibrant life. Well, if so, we have to take a look and see what's supporting that. What kind of influence are we getting to live that vibrant life? There's a lot to look at. All right, this is this week's subject. I'm glad you showed up. Thank you so much for coming in live today. Peace be with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.